Okay, in week 2 of 3D animation, we're going to look at animating cars. So in the resources on Moodle, we have 2 links I'm recommending you look at. This one here, 3D model low poly city. If you've logged in or created an account, you should be able to download this file. And I did this earlier, so I have one here. I'm going to download the FBX version of that. There are some other versions, but the FBX fits with the software I'm using. The other one I'm going to use is the cartoon low poly city cars. And for this one, again, I'm going to use FBX and get that downloaded. And that can go. These can go straight into my project file, and I can extract those ready for use. Okay, so I've now copied those from my download folder, and I'm pasting them into my Maya project. So I've done set project within Maya, and I'm just going to click on the FBX one and extract this. So as it comes, I will extract here, and that should open up FBX. In there's the textures that will link to it, and so those are the main files. So now I'm going to go to Maya. Like I said at the beginning of this, I did set project, and I set that up to fit my project here. If I'm going to open a file, open scene, and within here I will need to change this from Maya scenes to all files, and that will also show me the FBX files now. So I've got 2 files in there, the low poly city cars and this FBX here, which I'll open. And if I just zoom out, I can see the city. So it looks like with this file that the textures aren't showing up. So I need to click on this icon here to bring the textures in. But I can see that there is, for some reason it's not linked. So there'll be a small amount of work for me to set that back up. So I'll just save the scene as, I'll call it city textured. And from there I would go into the rendering editors and select the hypershade. The hypershade's, as you remember, where we did all the material work. So I can make that quite large now, and I can see all of the items in there have names, which is really useful because I'll be able to work out which texture they fit to, but they've actually not got the link to the file node. So if I look at the option there on the color for this, I can click on file. That takes me to this file menu here, and if I go into the FBX folder and textures, I should be able to find one of the same name that I was working to. So building 14, I can reconnect to building 14. They spelled it wrong, so it didn't come up in the right order. So I'll click open, and then that will link there as well. So I'm just going to go through all of these and work on those. You may find there's 1 or 2 missing, or 1 or 2 that are the same, but generally, so this one here, cement, so I connect that to the same cement file as I did the previous one. And I'll just keep working through like this. They're not actually in alphabetical order or anything, but you just need to just go through and link these together. And once we've done that, I can minimize this, and you can see at the moment we've got these in there. I'm not going to run through the whole thing in a video. You should be able to work those ones out yourself, and we can save the scene as we've gone forward. So now I've got all these textures linked in. I just want to point out a few things. The road texture didn't actually have a road texture, so I linked that to the same one as Crossroads, and you'll see in a minute that that's actually got some issues, but I would clean that up afterwards because I'm mainly concentrating on animation in this exercise. The other thing was some of the buildings weren't named. This one, building FBX, actually isn't a number, so we didn't know which building that was. So I've linked it to the same one as building 1. So there's a very similar one here, building 1. It shouldn't show up, but I will probably be able to notice if it's too obvious that it's in the wrong place. So now when I close down this window here, I can see that I've got my city that is all textured. So there's a lot of space in there, but what I'm going to do is, as I move around, I'm just going to click on a certain object and press F. Now that brings it to the center of the scene and allows me to rotate around that. So that's a good way of setting up where you want your cursor to be, or what do you want to look at. So that actually allows me to come into this area, and if I wanted to focus on that street, I can focus on that as well. So once I've done that, I can see in my outliner here, if you haven't got the outliner, you can go to Windows, Outliner, and that'll bring it up in a new window. I have mine on my display here already. I can see that all the objects in the scene are individual objects, and I actually want to tidy that up slightly, so I'm going to go in and just select all of those. So I've clicked on the first one and the last one, and I'm going to press Apple G, or you can do Edit Group, and that's going to group these together. So that becomes Group 1. It tidies up my workspace, and I can apply that there. So the other thing I can do with this is, with that selected, if I'm in my channel box layer editor, I can actually work with the layers here as well. So that's this icon up here if you haven't got that one. Layer 1 is what we're normally working to. We've got nothing in there at the moment, but I can do one of two things. What I'm going to do is create a layer from selected, and then you can actually turn on and off the city, and I can make that transparent, or I can make that a reference. So now I can't click on that, so it just makes that easier when I'm animating. So I can actually just move around the items I want to move around on. I can't actually do that thing with the focus anymore, but I've got a fairly good scope of what I'm working to. So I'm actually going to do good practice and name that layer, so I can spot that, and I can turn that on if I want to, turn it off and on if I want to, or see that as I go forward. So I'll just save that there, and again save my scene because this is ready to work with. Now the other file I brought into my project was the low poly cars. Now you can work with any cars, but I'm just doing a demonstration, so I'm going to work with these because there is a few different versions of them, a few different cars within this, and they should be quite easy to work with. So I'm going to select that, import, make sure I'm on all files again, otherwise it would just look for Maya files, MB and MA files, and I can see now that these cars have come in over on this part of the scene. So I can see one, they're a bit too large, clearly, and they are very much in the center of the scene as well. I can try shrinking them all together, giving them all a 0.5 on each dimension. And I'm guessing that is a fairly good standard to put them at. Then I can move the whole lot so I can actually see them. So that area there is a parking lot, so I'm going to actually move most of them there. The raised area is getting in the way of some of these, so you can either select them in the scene, press F, I'll get back into that, and again I want to focus on that one, or if we want to, we can select them from the outliner. So I'm just going to bring that up higher. So So these are low poly cars. The wheels won't turn around or anything on these, but we will, because it's all one item. So those would be just a single poly. If I double click that, I can actually call that truck, and then that allows me to start knowing which one's which. Car 3, blue. Then I decide which side of the road do the cars drive on, left or right, and also just find all the rest of these cars and actually move them into a position that seems a little bit more normal. Just to make sure I've got all of them, I'm going to highlight them all and press F, so that should show all of them. There's still a couple out on the side there. Yeah, there were some there and some there, some underneath. And then I can lasso those ones. Because I've got the city in its own layer, it won't actually select that in this instance, which is a great feature. So I lassoed around. If I didn't have the buildings in this layer here and have it on reference, I would have selected that at the same time as well. So you can see how that is useful. And these trucks are in there. So they seem to be, I've managed to line them up on the left. There is a few different ways of animating. We've done some keyframes. I'm going to leave that for a minute, the keyframes. What I'm going to explore first, once I've saved the scene again, is motion paths. So to set up a motion path, what we need to do is add in a line. So this one here is the EP curve tool. If I select that and just add 2 points, I should get a direct straight line between those 2 points, and then I can press enter and that becomes a green line. So you can see that there, that's running down the street. I may need to adjust that slightly afterwards. But what I'm also going to do is take a Nurbs Circle. So create a Nurbs Circle on the grid. If I press that, it'll automatically put that over on the origin of the scene. But I'm going to bring that over to near where a car is and press F so I can see it. And I want to make it bigger, so I just want to make it so that I can see that in comparison to this car. So I'll make it just wider than the car. That's about right, it's on the same level as that. So for the moment I'm not going to actually attach it to a car or anything. I'm going to keep that circle selected and then select the line here as well. Now I'm in the animation menu set here. I will also now move into the animation settings here, and I can see I've got 220 frames there. I'm going to expand this, so I want this to be a 10-second animation, so I can put 0 to 250. So if I'm running at 250 frames a second, I will be able to I'll be able to see where that is. So every 25 frames is a second in here. So going back to the curves, I'm going to take the Nurbs Circle and then also select the curve here, which is the straight line. And within the constrain menu, I'm going to go to motion path, attach to motion path. Now what happens here is I get a curve for that circle, and you can see if I move that around, it's actually moved to a different position. So now if I rewind and play, we'll see that that circle is moving down the line. It's easing in, it's easing out, and you can see that on the curves here. You can see it slowly moves forward, speeds up. So if you want a linear speed on this, that's what we did in the previous session, we can highlight these and change the tangent to linear. and that'll give a very even speed. So these are actually going to be background cars that will be moving all the time. So what I want to do next is, if I just rewind this, I can take this car here, and if I take the move tool, I can then move that car on top of that circle. Now this really only works because it's a straight line, so if you're doing curves, well, it will work with a single car. If you're doing this with multiple cars, like I'm going to demonstrate in a moment, you will probably have to stick to using just straight lines. So now that's in position where that circle starts, I want that car to move with the circle. So if you've got a 3-buttoned mouse, you can middle click this and drag that into the Nurbs Circle, and that becomes a child and the Nurbs Circle is the parent. So now I can press play and that will move with that circle itself. So if I just undo that, there is another way of working with this. I can select both of them and I should be able to go to edit, parent, or press P, and that makes that the car again is made a child of that object. So now that will move straight through the scene in a uniform speed. Again, these lines won't show up when you actually render this work. So that's going to follow there. So it's like a line of traffic moving very uniform speed. If I want to have other items in there, I can add those in as well. So this is the great thing about this, to get a background animation of traffic in the distance is very easy using this method. So do need to rotate this one slightly. So if I give it a rotation in the Y, that's the right way up, I can then select the Nurbs Circle and parent that to that as well. So now that will also move in the same speed. So now we've got a kind of line of traffic already going. It's just a matter of filling that out with other items, other cars and other items as well. So you can add that one. Again, rotate. That one's already got a rotation of 90, so that's probably going to be a plus 90. And again, Nurbs Circle, select them both and parent. So the important thing here is to really know where these cars are going, where they're moving to, how they're moving. This one here, I'll just add that one in as well, and then I've done that that set. I'm pressing Control when I click on the second one, and I'm pressing P on the keyboard, and that will go in. So that's setting up a motion path. I'll set one up the other way. So last time I did it, I started at this top end and drew down to that end. I'm going to do it the other way around now. So I'm going to select the EP curve tool here and click here, and then it will end up over here. Similarly again, a Nurbs Circle, which I want to scale up. Nurbs Circle 2. So I can scale that up so I can see it, and then using the move tool, put it near. Probably don't actually have to move it, but I will just for the sake of seeing that. And select them both, constrain, motion paths, attach to motion path. Now you can see here it's got the 0 and the 250. So those are the frames it's working to. I can rewind, play, and I can see that that one's going in the opposite direction. So now it's a matter of looking at that. I've got the circle selected still, so I should be able to quite simply push that bus onto the road there and get that parented to that item again as well. So there you go, that should actually start moving. That one's got an easing on it, that's absolutely fine. And similarly, if I rewind the whole thing, I just want to put a car going the opposite direction. And then I will move on to the next stage, which is setting up cameras so I can actually have a scene within this, and set up the kind of the staging of the scene as I'm going forward. So to set up the staging within here, I can create some cameras. So cameras, you can go create camera, your camera and aim. Generally I use camera if I'm working in Unity, but camera and aim is a great thing as well. So I've created one. It's probably just come onto the, if I press F, I see that right in the center of the scene, and I can move that to a position where it's actually useful for me. Over here, and I'm also able to scale that, so it doesn't matter how large that is in terms of how it looks, it will still have the same effect. So, but it's better to have a fairly large object that you can work with. Now, the key thing about cameras is this is what you will have in your shot. So I'll bring this forward. I'm not actually seeing what is in that camera at the moment. I'm using the perspective camera. What I can do is, with the mouse hovering over this window here, I can press spacebar, and this will give me a 4-up view, similar to this one here. This is the shortcut to it here. But I can go to panel, perspective, and I can select the camera I've just chosen. So this allows me to actually get a good idea of what that camera will be looking at. So camera 1Z. That's the Z axis of that, is it? But it's looking Z forward. So I can see if I move that around, I get an idea of what that is. The key thing to remember though is I'm getting an odd size shape, so I don't know what look I'm going to have with that. If I turn the textures on, if I put film gate on, I can actually see what the picture is, the size of the picture I'll be working to. Now this will be set in the render settings. You don't need to do this now, but if you do want to get ahead and set that up, you can tell it which one to work with. So it's HD 540, which is a 16:9 ratio. So that's perfectly adequate. That's a half size of a standard television. So it's a kind of a low res HD. It renders quicker, and it will work fine for this. So you can see the relationship between this camera there and that car. I can also just line this up so I've got a bit of foreground in the scene, and then I can rewind and play. So because I'm working in this window, it's only playing that window. If I click on this window here, I'll see what goes through that scene, and I can see that I've got a nice level of animation that just jumped in at the beginning of that scene. So I might move that car slightly further back, but I've got this action going on already. So this is a good secondary action for my scene, and it allows me to have a really useful look, a busy look, a realistic feel to a scene. So there's one fix I wanted to do, which was just to move that blue car just out of shot for when it starts. Just out of shot on that one. So it's just a matter of kind of getting the staging, just to get that to go through the scene. It is speeding up. The others have got a fairly constant speed, and that's much better for me. Again, if your scenes are going very fast, we do have playback speed. Play every frame, maximum real time. Best to have it on that or real time. You can get that from the playback menu here as well. So playback speed, real time. So we can get that to work as well. Now the other thing we can do is we can make a video of this scene as well. So if I say play blast and click on this option there, I can just tell it how much to work with. So it's got time slider. The time slider is this one here, 0 to 250. So if you've got that set up right, then you can make that work. If I say start to end, I can say start on frame 1, end on 250, and just tell it to do AVI with none, which will give me a very large file. I'll just play blast that one, and that does come up. So that gives me the whole area of that viewport that it's playing in. So that wasn't quite what I wanted, but I can go over that again. And so if I say play blast, and select that, I should be able to say display size from render settings. So that's why it was important to do the render settings. So I've got a file for that already, so I can overwrite that. It's given me a scan, so I would only really, when I actually render a scene, get that full area there. This is allowing me to just get an idea of what's going on. It does have these blue lines. It's not a final render. We'll be looking at that in the future, but that's a good way of setting up a single camera that you might want to be working with. Now, I mentioned that there was another type of camera. If I want to work with camera and aim, this gives me another few opportunities. So if I just create one to start with, and I'm going to hover over the perspective window there and press spacebar, that allows me to get a view of the whole scene. And then I'm going to bring my camera and aim over to where I'm shooting from. So I'm shooting away in the same direction as this camera, really, so I don't cross the line with my shot. And so now I can expand that. I really want to just expand the camera. So in my outliner, I can just make that bigger there and raise that up slightly. You can see that that actually points at the object, which is the aim. So as I bring that up, that points at that, and this one, if I move that around, it will follow that as it moves. So this is really useful for revealing shots, or revealing cars, or for tracking shots. And in this instance, rewind the film. I can then do something like I can move that actually onto the car over here, so that I can see, so I can just track with it. So I'm moving it near the car, just go above, and if I get that just over the front of the car there, just see if it's lower down. No, it's pointing right at the top, so then I'll bring that down slightly. Then I can actually use that one on this car. I'm just going to rename that, double click, retract. And if I select that one and that one, then I should be able to parent that inside there. So now as the film moves forward, that aim should move with the camera, and the camera should follow that. So I can check that out as it goes through, and I can also, if I spacebar that, I can change another of these panels into the camera. So that's camera 2 there. So that should move with that camera and give me a really nice sweeping panning shot of that car coming through. I'll also just bring that back slightly so you get the reveal. Oh, I moved into another object there. So I just want to have it in a slightly different position. You can get a nice, should be able to get a nice angle on here that might reveal it with another object covering the way as well. So now if I press spacebar on this one, I should be able to see that move as it comes through. So I see that moving, it's coming off that car. You see it in the background, and there's a lot of other things going on. So that then stages this area here. So that allows me to move on to another part of the scene within this as well. So that's another way of working with cameras. I'd only really probably use this part of the shot, and possibly let it settle around there anyway. But So that's the second type of camera, the camera and aim group. So the last thing I'm going to show you is another normal standard camera. So I'll make a camera, and I'm going to make sure I'm not moving in this window, because if I do make changes in these windows, which are the cameras I'm setting up, then it will actually change where I'd set my camera. So I'm always going to move around in the perspective view. It's quite an important part of knowing what's going on. And I'm going to bring that camera over to the blue car. So the blue car is becoming a real feature of this. Press space bar. So again, my third camera will be camera 3. Currently it's looking out over there, and I'm going to expand that up. So now I can see at that point that camera, if I'm in this window, that car will drive through the scene. What I might want to do though is have a car camera, so a car cam that will follow with that. So I'll just bring it around the back and just do a few adjustments to this, so I can see where the camera's going, and just bring that into the scene here, so I can follow with that car as it goes through. So again, this is a parenting thing, so I'm going to click on the camera, click on the car that is tracked, and I'm going to parent that together. So now when I'm watching this camera, I can see that that moves along with it. So it's locked onto that car, and it can see that as it goes forward. So I can actually see that there are some problems with that. It wasn't the feature car, so it wasn't didn't start at the beginning, but you can see how that can work for a shot. Now finally I'm going to try sending this over to Unity. Some of you may have that as a workflow, so I'm selecting all the objects here, and then I'm going to go to send to Unity. So first of all I'll set up my Unity folder, which is a Unity project, so I'll select that one, and then I'll do a send to Unity selection, and FB export animation, yes. I may need to bake the animation, but I'm going to leave that for now. And embed media. So I did spend a while reattaching all the media. So in this case, I am going to send that media across as well. Embed that into this FBX. So I'll export that. That's actually done it quite quickly. So if I come through, we'll just see whether this animation actually works within Unity. So I'll just drop that into our scene, and within that we've got City 1, and we have the different cameras within this as well. So camera 2, I can see where that is, and that's showing up within the scene. So if I do press play, nothing's going on. It jumps to that camera there. We're not actually seeing the animation. So if I make sure it doesn't maximize on play, and bring the scene up so it's quite large as well. So I'm saying that this doesn't actually, and what I'm trying to say here is, this is a motion paths is something that we're working on within Maya, but as I press play here, we're seeing that that doesn't actually move. So this Nurbs Circle, I can find that in the scene. I can see where it is, and what I may need to do is work out how to turn that animation on. So there's some more steps we need to do in Unity. So one of the first things I'm going to do when I'm in the inspector here, I'm going to extract the textures, and I'll just make a folder for those. bring those out. Materials aren't so important. I'm seeing here that I think some of the normals are the wrong way around on some of these buildings, so they're kind of showing the inside of the building rather than the outside of the building. So that is a bit of an issue. So I will have to go back and fix some of those as well. So once it starts moving again, so you can see there I'm actually losing the back faces of these particular buildings here. So that I'll just check if there's many others that do the same thing. Well, not really, and it's also out of shot, so I'm not going to worry too much about that, but I'll just show you in Maya how to fix that one. So if I find the building that it's doing it with, I need to get the layer selected, so I can press F on that now. And what I need to do is, if I go back to modeling, I should be able to reverse normals on that. So normals, reverse. So I click on that. Nothing actually looks like it happens here, but when I re-export that, just enter Unity selection. I will reset this. General options, current preset, media entertainment. Animation. I've got. That's fine. Constraints, I wanted to add that one, that's all. So now when I export that, I should be able to go back to Unity now, and this should pop into place. There you go. So that's the right way around now. So the normals are just showing which face will make that work. So the steps I'll take when I export this again, so I've still got the things selected. Send to Unity, and just make sure you got the bake animation turned on, 0 to 250. I've also got constraints. So I've checked constraints because we were using the constraint menu here. And when I send this across, it gives me a warning about the complex animation. 12 attributes had complex animation. So what I'm going to do is now go back to Unity. It's just importing that file. So I drop that into the scene and turn City 1 off. And now again, if I play, it won't move. But this time, if I change the animation type to Legacy and press Apply, then hopefully we'll get the cars moving. So we get that camera shot there, getting this all starting to work. If I do maximize on play, I'll be able to see that in full screen. So potentially that's a real-time rendered version of the animation. I can see some errors with it already. I think the bus was flying a bit high up in the air. If I rerun that one, just watch out for that sort of thing. So that's hovering. Don't really notice on the back ones, but that's like a foot off the air. So you've got to match the position of the vehicles with the shadows. It's fairly easy to do. If we go back and just have a little, oops, what I didn't want to do was move camera 1, but just set that back where it was. If I look at the perspective view and just find the bus, focus on it, and just spot how it's positioned in the scene there. So I can just bring that across, and if I look at the wheels close enough, I can see where is that just about touching the ground. So it can kind of go under slightly. That's great. So I'll bring that one down, and I'll also check with this car here. Bring that down so it's not floating. Save the scene, and I need to do my selection and then send that back to Unity and overwrite the one that I was working on. So I can overwrite City 2, still got the baked animation on, and it should remember the settings that I set up to use legacy animation as it comes in. So now when I press play, I should see the bus. Yeah, there you go, the car's on the ground, bus is on the ground. It's working a lot better, and that's giving me this animation in this scene, rendered it nicely. I can add some effects in Unity, and I can record this clip directly in Unity when it's done.